So I'm just going to mass up gold right here, buy some items. I could have gotten some upgrades, but I don't think I did this game, but it's still a good option to do. And I'm just going to creep right now, level my heroes a bit, use up this advantage until I can get a sufficient force and try and attack his base and win the game. And as you can see, I'm sending skeleton scouts out to check the gold mines. I had a suspicion that he was going to try and expand, but I didn't see his expansion at any of the traditional gold mines. But as you can see, he is going to try and creep. So anyways, if you go back to my army, I'm going to pick up some items, I'm going to creep out the other camp, and then I'm going to start to go into low upkeep, and once I do that, then I'll probably assault his base. He's going to try and put up an expansion on the island, which is definitely a smart idea anytime that you get Gargs and are playing on Twisted Meadows versus any race. Utilize that island expansion, because it's definitely hard to assault the island expansion. So for items, I pick up Potion of Invulnerability, Scroll of Protection, Scroll of Healing. Pretty standard items. What was I going to say? It would be more effective to have Ghouls and Scroll of Healing, but I mean, Scroll of Healing works great with Fiends as well, because I want to try and keep them alive as long as possible to web as many Gargs as I can. So as you can see, I am into 60 food. I've got my Dreadlord coming. Perhaps I should have built that extra ziggurat earlier if I knew I was going to rush into low upkeep, but it's kind of a bit too late right now. And I feel that I have a sufficient advantage that I can assault his base. But typically you never really want to assault an undead base head on. I just felt confident that I could win the game right here. I felt that I could defeat both the base defenses and his army, but he's going to start upgrading lots of spirit towers. So once he gets like 3 or 4 spirit towers, you probably want to pull back, get some meat wagons, and then just kind of drag out the game in a siege war. And his base defense, or his base structure, is pretty good, as you can notice. His ziggurats and spirit towers are behind all his production buildings. He doesn't really have a very good access to the gold mine, and really any place that I attack at his base, I'm going to be getting hit by towers. So that's definitely one strength that this player has. He has a good base build. But I'm just going to say, you know what, screw it. I think I can win the battle right here. So I'm starting to press the attack. He is starting his island expansion right now. I have bad position right here. I have my fiends out in front. I think I'm going to lose one of them right here, which is kind of stupid. I definitely have to watch out with position. But really at this point in the game it doesn't really matter. I have, 4-3-1, and he has 3-3, and I definitely have a stronger army than him. So I'm just going a bit kind of gung-ho, trying to finish the game right now. It's a bit dangerous, but that's how I like to live, dangerously. So I decided to pull back. It's not really worth it. And I think at this point I kind of got a sneaking suspicion that he was putting up an expansion on the island. I don't really know why I had that suspicion yet, but I think it's because that when I go up to the Goblin Laboratory up here, I see that it's crept out. And anytime you see the Goblin Laboratory crept out, it's definitely a good idea to check the gold mine to make sure they're not expanding, especially when they have gargoyles. So I'm going to hire a Zeppelin, but I'm not going to put my heroes in it right away because that's kind of risky. I'm just going to scout it out and see if he's there. And especially against those mass guards, because right here he's going to see my Zeppelin, and if my heroes could have been in there, I could have been in a sticky situation where they might get dizzied or something like that. But I see his expansion, and he does kind of a dumb move here and runs his heroes out. But I mean, really, at this point, the game is already over. I think I've started an expansion at the bottom of the map. and I've got a superior army. I've got a good number of fiends, and he didn't really adapt well to my army to counter it. So the game's over, he leaves. So that's part 1 of the how to beat the mass gargoyle strategy. Why don't you get the second game loaded up between 4K Fury and SK.MaDFroG. Put it, just like the last one, to the 15-second mark. 1x speed from 4K Fury's point of view. And I'll give you guys a second to get that loaded up. And while we load up the game, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've been playing Undead for a long time, since pretty much the end of Rock, and I consider myself a decent player, maybe above average. I tend to smurf around a bit too much, but you know, that's just a bad habit. And really, I'd have to say my favorite player would be 4K Fury, because as you can see in this game, his strategy is really solid. Like, if you compare him to, say, Fav has really amazing micro, and you can just be stunned by some of the moves that he pulls off. But really, I mean, how can you learn from that? You can't really learn from seeing those amazingly, spectacular micro moves. Fury, on the other hand, is a much more stable player. His strategy is really his strength, his scouting, his adaptability, and really, I feel that I can learn the most from his games. So anyways, hopefully you guys have that second game up and pause at the 15-second mark, 1x speed, and why don't we get this on pause? So 3, 2, 1, unpause. So Echo Isle, small map, really good for Lich at the start of the game. Fury does the same build order, Crypt, Ziggurat, Altar. As I said before, it's just a matter of personal preference. And in this game, you're going to see MaDFroG attempt his traditional mass gargoyles, and Fury is going to attempt to counter that with fiends. And I think it's important to, well, there's pros and cons of doing this game, because you can see that the pros are that you can see the professional level of play, the professional strategies, but really I can't give you the inside thoughts of what they're thinking. But I guess that's why I tried to do both one of my own games and one of Fury's games. So hopefully you'll be able to learn a little bit more from Fury's play. I'll try and get inside his head as much as possible, and point out the mistakes and strengths of these two strategies. So anyways, Fury sends his ghoul to scout and cause some problems, make sure that MaDFroG is doing the ordinary strategy. But Fury, he chooses to use his Lich at the start of the game a little bit more aggressively than me. What he does is he sends his Lich out, just his Lich out, with a skeleton rod, and attempts to creepjack and harass the base and do stuff like that. And really, it's totally a viable strategy. It's, again, just a matter of personal preference. So he's causing problems in MaDFroG's base. He's taking the ghouls off lumber, which is costing MaDFroG lumber, while MaDFroG chose to scout with an acolyte, which really, in this matchup, I don't like scouting with the acolyte. I like scouting with the ghoul, because if they choose, as I mentioned before, to Nova it, you can ghoul rush them. So I think in this game, MaDFroG also chooses to Nova the ghoul, but I think he only uses one, which is, in my opinion, still not that great of a decision, but it really doesn't affect the game too much here, so I guess it works out for him. So Fury is going to head off and harass, try and harass his base, harass his creeping. Another reason why possibly that he doesn't like to bring his ghouls with him is he wants to tech faster, which is why he'd leave his ghouls at the base to acquire more lumber. But I mean, at the same time, once you get that 210 lumber required, you can really just pull your ghouls off and leave 1 or 2 behind. So he pulls up his skeletons and he's going to try and look for a creepjack. but MaDFroG is now creeping it. And as you can see in MaDFroG's base, he's producing more ghouls early game than my earlier opponent did, and definitely that's a much smarter strategy, because you'll be able to fend off any attacks early game. And for the most part, in a lot of the Undead versus Undead matchups that I've played, most players will just rush you right off the bat regardless whether you use Nova or not. They'll just try and end the game right there. So you definitely want to have enough ghouls to be able to defend yourself. You don't want to tech too quickly or it could cost you. So anyways, both players are teching now. Fury doesn't want to go too far into his base because it's definitely a risky strategy. And I think he's going to back off right away and start creeping himself. Oh no, MaDFroG is choosing to be the aggressor right here and push the attack. His mana is almost back to full in his Lich, so it won't give Fury too much of an advantage. So I'm going to talk about how to micro ghouls right now. And Fury knows that he's coming to his base, so he's going to pull all his ghouls off lumber. And now right here, as you're going to see, how to micro ghouls. When the battle actually starts, what you want to be doing is you want to select 2 or 3 ghouls at a time, and you want to tell them to attack a single target as fast as you can. Select 2 or 3 ghouls, attack a single target. 2 or 3 ghouls, attack a single target. And this way you're maximizing your efficiency with the ghouls. You're focus firing multiple targets instead of just one. And then after you do that, then you want to worry about pulling your weak ghouls back. Because when you're using ghouls, you want to make sure that you're focusing, you're killing units first. That's your first priority with ghouls, is to kill units. And because they're cheap and they don't cost a lot of food, they're expendable. But if you have good enough micro to pull them back as well, that's definitely a bonus as well. But you just, for the average players, you want to make sure you're focusing on killing units first with the ghouls. And lately I've been experimenting with reforming control groups, which I'll try and explain. It might be a little difficult to explain, but here's what I used to do. Basically, when I had a weak ghoul that I wanted to send back to my base, I would select the ghoul, click at the back of my base, then I would select, number 1 for my control group to have all of my ghouls. I would have to click the weak ghoul to take him out of the control group, and then I have to reform the control group by going control 1. But lately I've been trying something a little different, which is sped things up a little bit. Basically what I would do is I would send the ghoul to the back of my base, and once the ghoul was out of the range, I would just reselect the entire control group. I just click and drag the cursor, create the green box over my new control group, and then I just reform the control group, control 1. And basically this will save